All right, joining me to discuss is Jackson Richman, a Washington correspondent with the JNS.org. Thank you for being with us, Jackson. Let's start off with that first cartoon we mentioned, because there have been others published by the New York Times since then. Let's start off with the cartoon depicting Prime Minister Netanyahu as President Trump's seeing eye dog, if you will, wearing a dog collar with the Star of David on it. Explain why this cartoon is anti-Semitic and not just political commentary.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me on. I think New York Times columnist Bret Stephens, who along with Barry Weiss, fellow writer at the Times, and others, have called out. I think Stephens wrote it best, and if you don't mind, I'm going to just quote a part of his column from Sunday. Here was an image that in another age might have been published in the pages of Der Stürmer, which was the German, the Nazi newspaper published by Julius Streicher. The Jew is the form of a dog, the small but wily Jew leading the dumb and trusting American, the hated Trump being Judaized with a skull cap, the nominal servant acting as the true master. The cartoon checked so many anti-Semitic boxes that the only thing missing was a dollar sign. The image also had an obvious political message, namely that in the current administration, the United States follows wherever Israel wants to go. This is false. Consider Israel's horrified reaction to Trump's announcement last year that he intended to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria. But it's beside the point. There are legitimate ways to criticize Trump's approach to Israel, in pictures as well as words. But there was nothing legitimate about this cartoon, end quote.
All right. So as you mentioned, a number of anti-Semitic tropes and images that have been traditionally used by Nazis, again, resurfacing in this cartoon. Now, the New York Times has apologized. Do you think that that is enough? How do you think that the New York Times should address this?
Well, many have called for the New York Times to fire those responsible or take action to prevent something like this happening again. Unfortunately, over the weekend, the New York Times International Edition published a cartoon by the Norwegian illustrator Roar Hagen, which depicts Netanyahu.
And we do have images of those cartoons, which we can pull up as you're describing it right now. We should have images of those other cartoons, and there you have it. So carry on, Jackson. Just wanted to have the visual up as you were giving your position on it.
Yes. So Prime Minister Netanyahu, sinister looking, is walking in what appears to be an empty desert with a tablet. Painted on it is the Israeli flag, and he's taking a selfie of himself. And this picture, this cartoon, resembles one that was depicted from another one, in that Netanyahu was walking with what appears to be the Ten Commandments, again, in a desert, but he's followed by President Trump. And he's also holding Ten Commandments. And it goes to show, like the dog cartoon, that Trump follows Netanyahu, and that in the initial depiction, I'm sorry, not the initial depiction, but the one that the depiction is based off of, there's a sign, a pointed sign that reads Golan. And that, of course, references the Golan Heights, which President Trump officially recognized last month.
Yeah, so, apologizing for one cartoon that many have seen as anti-Semitic, and then running another cartoon that many see as anti-Semitic. Jackson, it seems that while there's harsh condemnation of anti-Semitism from the far right, many would argue that there is not strong condemnation against anti-Semitism if it comes from the left, that it's acceptable to many on the left to employ anti-Semitic tropes as long as they're directed against Israel, that anti-Zionism is becoming an acceptable cover for anti-Semitism. Do you think that that is the case? And if so, very quickly, how do you think this needs to be addressed?
I think there's too much of a focus that there's anti-Semitism prevalent on the left or anti-Semitism prevalent on the right, in which many are saying that anti-Semitism, bigotry of any kind needs to be condemned regardless of where it originates. And we even see anti-Semitism from radical Islamists. And of course, all these cartoons were published, the Weekend one was published as a synagogue in California. The Chabad of Poway was attacked with 1 dead and 3 others injured. So the timing of the cartoons couldn't have come at
absolutely
any
not.
worse moment.
Jackson, thank you so much. Jackson Richman, appreciate it.